Welcome to Friends and Fiction. 4 New York Times bestselling authors, endless stories. Novelists Mary Kay Andrews, Kristin Harmel, Kristy Woodson Harvey, and Patti Callahan Henry are 4 longtime friends with more than 70 published books between them. Together, they host Friends and Fiction, with author interviews and fascinating insider talk about publishing and writing, to highlight and support independent bookstores. They discuss the books they've written, the books they're reading now, and the art of storytelling. If you love books and you're curious about the writing world, you're in the right place. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Friends and Fiction Show. I'm Kristin Harmel.
I'm Patti Callahan Henry.
And this is Friends and Fiction, 4 New York Times bestselling authors, endless stories to support indie bookstores, authors, and librarians.
So, Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year!
January 1st, which also happens to be my daughter's birthday. That was a fun New Year's Eve for me. But welcome to the very first episode of 2025. And by coincidence, or maybe by design, this is the 250th episode of the Friends and Fiction Show.
I honestly...
150, Kristin.
It is unbelievable. And in fact, we had lost track. Sean had to tell us it was the 250th episode. So thank you, Sean. But when we first started in April 2020 at the dawn of the pandemic, we could not have imagined that there would be a day when we would be hosting our 250th episode.
With 250,000 members on the Facebook.
Yes, exactly.
So that's our magic number, I guess, 250. Which adds up to 7. I don't know. But which is a lucky number. Anyway, it is really astonishing. And aren't we lucky that for that episode, we have Fiona? So not only that, in April 2025, we will celebrate our 5th anniversary.
Crazy.
5 years of Friends and Fiction. Wow. So huge thanks to all of you out there for being along for the ride. And if you've just joined the ride, it's a good one and welcome. Let's get on with the show.
So if you're not with us already, we hope you will join our Facebook group, which, as Patti said, is more than 250,000 members strong. We would also like to invite you to follow us on Instagram and YouTube and to subscribe to our Substack newsletter, which is full of awesome bonus content. You can find out more, I can't even talk, about our community and all we have to offer at friendsandfiction.com.
So on this episode, we are thrilled to welcome our friend Fiona Davis to discuss her new novel, The Stolen Queen, which comes out next week. And we are so excited to speak with her about it.
Yeah, we really are. Fiona, I think, has been on the show a handful of times, and we always love her. Our readers love her. It's just going to be fantastic. But Patti, Fiona is known, as we know, because we've talked to her many times about this, for choosing New York landmarks and spinning these New York set stories based around those real buildings. So I think you and I both deal a little bit in place, too. It plays an important role in our fiction. Can you talk a little bit about choosing a place, in your case, the Lake District of England, for your new book, and how having such a strong sense of place shaped your narrative?
Setting for me sometimes even comes first. So I'll be interested to talk to Fiona about that too. But for me, it doesn't have to be this way with every writer or every book. Sometimes a plot can feel so untethered from place, but the story is engaging. But for me, it is often said that setting is a character. Yeah. But I want more than that. I want this setting to be so important that if I pulled this story out of that setting, it wouldn't be that story. Yeah. It would be a completely different story. So the book that comes out in March, you're right, is set in the Lake District. It is called The Story She Left Behind. It is also set in South Carolina and London. But I did that because much of the story was inspired by Beatrix Potter. And that is her land and that is her place. And if I remove the story from the Lake District, it is a completely different kind of story. Also, I needed to do research and go. So there's that. How about you? I know that a lot of your books are set in Paris. So, how do these specific places shape your story? And we know you love Paris, but what is it about Paris that has you using this, not using,
Yeah.
setting this place over and over?
When I lived in Paris, I was a different person than I am now. And Paris really changed me. I mean, it changed who I was and who I became. And I mean, so I think that not only does setting play a role on the page, but in our real lives, it plays a
Yeah.
role. I would have been a different person if I'd stayed in Paris. I would be a different person if I'd never been to Paris. Just like Patty, if you'd been raised in, Australia, you'd be a different version of Patty than the one we know today. Like we're shaped by our environment, which I think is so powerful. And you're absolutely right. I think about setting being a character. I think about Sex in the City. That show couldn't have taken place any place but New York. Emily in Paris. That couldn't take place any place but Paris. Well, also Rome this season, I guess.
Yeah.
But I mean, setting really matters. And I know Fiona, I think, understands that so deeply. And I'm just really excited to talk to her today about it. So, all right, now let's get on with
Wait, real quick. The
Oh, yeah,
Stolen
sure.
Life of Colette
Oh,
Marceau.
The
Your
Stolen Life
June
of
book
Colette.
is set in Paris.
It is indeed, yes.
Okay.
And like you, I can't resist the allure of going back on a research trip. So I'm like, oh, another book in Paris. I have to do it.
Yes,
No,
I have
it
to
is.
go.
Paris means a lot to me. It's a wonderful place to set books, and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you for mentioning that. All right, now let's welcome our friend Fiona Davis.
So, Fiona is the New York Times bestselling author of 7 historical novels set in iconic New York City buildings, including The Spectacular, The Magnolia Palace, The Address, The Lions of Fifth Avenue, which was a Good Morning America pick. I've read every single one of those. Fiona's articles have appeared in publications like the Wall Street Journal and Oprah Magazine and more.
Fiona first came to New York as an actress, but she fell in love with writing after getting a master's degree at Columbia. Her books have been translated into more than 20 languages. Her new novel, The Stolen Queen, will be released on January 7th, and it is an utterly addictive novel that will transport you from New York City's most glamorous party, the Met Gala, to the labyrinth streets of Cairo and back. All right, Sean, can you bring Fiona on?
Hi.
Hi, my
Fiona,
friends.
welcome. Happy New
Happy
Year.
250. Happy 250. That's
Thank
quite a
you.
number.
250 and 2025. All these 2s and 5s are.
I know, with 250,000 members. It's a strange.
Crazy.
Ooh, we need to look that up. What metaphysical thing is that?
I
That's
don't
really
know.
cool.
We're in a
It
vortex
is.
right now, is what I'm thinking. We're in
Yes.
some kind of
We're-
vortex.
We're in an alternate, we're in a simulation. We're in a computer game, a
Yeah,
simulation.
speaking of place, that's our place in the vortex.
Yeah,
Exactly.
simulation.
So, Fiona, welcome back to the Friends and Fiction Show. We are so glad to have you. And as many of our viewers and listeners know, your trademark as an author is that you write historical fiction about New York landmark buildings. I think we are all thrilled that you've taken on the Metropolitan Museum of Art in The Stolen Queen, which spans from 1936 Egypt to 1978 Manhattan, and which takes us from a dig in Egypt's Valley of the Kings to the chaos and glamour of Diana Vreeland's Met Gala in its 1970s heyday. Can you tell us a bit about what the book's about? And then one of our favorite questions, which I actually think originated from Kate Quinn, right, Patty?
It did. It
Kate
did. She
gave us
asked
this
me
question.
that in an interview, and
Yeah.
I was like,
Yes.
ding, ding, ding.
Yes, exactly. So tell us what the book's about, and then can you tell us, Kate Quinn's brilliant question, what is the book really about at its core?
Oh, I love that. She's so good, isn't she?
She
She's
is.
terrific. So the book, as you said, takes place at the Met Museum. And in the 1970s, it's from the point of view of this very serious and enigmatic curator named Charlotte. She's in her 60s, and she is unwillingly teamed up with that overeager 19-year-old assistant to Diana Vreeland at the Met Gala in order to track down a stolen artifact that they're both very personally invested in. And as you mentioned, part of the novel goes back to the 1930s when Charlotte was a young girl just starting out in archaeology. And, there's hidden secrets and deadly curses. I like to say it's a mix of glamour and mummies.
Ooh,
Oh, I love that.
it's a great pitch.
Or even better, recently I came up with it's Indiana Jones meets Thelma and Louise meets Devil Wears Prada.
I love that. That's the perfect description. Fiona, what would you say it's about at its core?
At
Like,
its
what's the
core, I would say,
underlying?
yep, at its core, it's about mothers and daughters. It's about female friendships.
Mm.
And it's about looking at a museum and its artifacts as not a collection of art, but a collection of stories. And that by examining the stories, you really get a sense of the past and different time, different places, and then how it affects today.
Oh, I love that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, Kristen and I talked briefly before you came on about the importance of place. And I want to know, what was your original inspiration for writing about New York landmarks? Like, there had to be a moment where there was either a ping or a seed was planted. What was that? And did you know how powerful that would be?
No, I had no idea I was starting this franchise that, I can't believe no one had done it before. But yeah, I was a journalist and I learned about the Barbizon Hotel for Women, which had been the storied hotel in the 50s with Joan Didion and, all the Grace Kelly, all the famous women stayed there. And then later it became a condo. And when it did, there were a dozen of the old time ladies still there. And they were moved into fourth floor studios while they built this luxury condo around them. And as a journalist, I wanted to know what's it like when one of these 80, 90-year-old women gets on the elevator with the guy who bought the $17 million penthouse, right? They've lived there
Yes.
for decades. They own it. But it didn't work as an article because the women were very private at that time. And I couldn't shake it. And I thought, well, maybe this will be a book and I can do two different time periods and compare how the city's changed. And then when that seems to take off, I just thought, well, what other building do I want to go snoop around in? And it turned out to
Yeah.
be the Dakota. And then it was just a very organic decision. It wasn't something I thought, well, people will like this. It was just what I like. I love going into old buildings and being snoopy and asking a lot of questions.
I love that.
Well, I always say when people, ask, where do ideas come from? What should I write about? I always say, write about what you're curious about. And you were
Yeah.
curious and you wanted to know more. And story comes up out of curiosity. So how do you decide which building you'll feature for each book?
Yeah, I don't plan ahead. Someone asked me, do I have a binder full of buildings? And I don't.
Well,
But
Marie Benedict told us she did have a binder full of women because she writes about real women in history and that she actually
yeah,
did. So that's funny.
Yep.
of
Yeah.
course she does. She's
Of
she's
course, right?
brilliant. Of
Yeah.
course she does. For me, it's just kind of once I'm done with the manuscript, I just start searching around for what might pop up next. And with this, the Met popped up in a way that was kind of unusual. I was thinking about setting it there, but at the same time, I was totally intimidated. It's enormous. There's a million departments. There's, thousands of employees. How will I ever narrow it down? And then I saw a New York Times article about the 2018 Met Gala, and Kim Kardashian showed up wearing this all gold glittery dress.
I
And
remember
she
that.
posed at one point next to this sarcophagus that was covered in gold as well. And it was a great photo. The sarcophagus had been bought by the Met the year before for $4 million. It was very cool. And it went viral to the point where the guy who smuggled and robbed that sarcophagus out of Egypt complained to an undercover informant that he'd never gotten paid. And that got back to the Manhattan DA's office, which has a whole unit for stolen art. And they realized that the export license had been forged and the Met was forced to give it back. And I thought, what a wild mix of pop culture and ancient art,
Yes.
all embodied in this one building. And that's when I knew I had my way in. I thought the Egyptian wing and the Met Gala, I can work with that. And so Kim Kardashian does not show up in the book because it's 1978, but she did influence it.
That
That
is
is
so cool.
I love that. All right. So, speaking of these Egyptian artifacts, since you're known for writing about New York, can you talk a little bit about how Egypt, how different the research process was for you once you decided that Egypt would be one of the settings as well? Because that's a little bit different for you.
Yeah, I haven't gone out of New York I mean, I have physically, but not in my books. And so I knew this would require a trip to Egypt. If I was going to try and write about Egypt in the 1930s and in the 1970s, I had to be there to see what it smells like,
Yes.
what's it sound like. And it was incredible. We took a wonderful trip where we landed at 4:30 in the morning. We got into this van, took us to our hotel, which was near the pyramids. And so at one point you turned a corner and there were the pyramids, all pink as the sun was rising. It was so, you think, that's
Amazing.
actually it. And then we did this great tour up the Nile and saw all these wonderful temples
Oh
in the
my
Valley of the
gosh.
Kings. And it was incredible. And it was for things like, at a certain point of the day, the sand starts blowing and it covers the sun and it turns kind of orange and otherworldly. And I wanted to be able to describe it in a way that readers could feel like they were there as well.
You did. You did. You really nailed that. I mean, that's not a place, that's not a part of the world I've had experience with, but I really did feel it come alive in the pages of your novel.
Good. Oh, that's great to hear.
Yeah.
So there we've got your place and your visit and the sandy dunes and seeing the pyramids, which just you saying that gave me head to toe chills because there's
Yeah,
some
sounds
things in the
awesome.
world you will only and ever see in a photo. And you got to turn a corner and see the sun rising over it. So your character, Charlotte, gets to see all that. So I want to talk about her. You say in your author's note that she is partially inspired by famed female French archaeologist Christiane de Roche. So I want to hear about Christiane.
Yeah, so a writer named Lynn Olson writes wonderful nonfiction books about history. Highly recommend them. And she wrote this book called Empress of the Nile. And it's about
Mm.
this woman, Christiane de Roche Noblecourt, who was a French resistance fighter during World War II, and in fact helped save artwork from the Louvre,
That's
to get it out of the Louvre so that the Germans couldn't get it, which is a book in itself, by the way, Kristen.
yeah.
Yeah,
Like
she's
scribbling
incredible.
quickly.
Right? Put that in your binder of women.
Yeah.
And but she's just incredible. And so then later she went to Egypt. She was an archaeologist. She had these incredible finds. Later on, she helped save these temples from being flooded after the Aswan Dam was sent to be built. She just did, amazing thing after amazing thing. And the thing about the research in Lynn's book is that it gave me such a clear idea of what it was like. So, for example, she explained that in the 30s, when you were on a dig, you slept in cots under a tent and you would put cups of water under the legs of your cot so the scorpions couldn't crawl up.
What a
And so
detail.
it's that kind of detail that just
Yeah.
lands the reader where they should be. So so I was very inspired by her.
That's
Wow.
awesome.
Whenever I'm stuck in a book, I think I need more research because that will take me
Yep.
to the next thing every time. So there we have, who inspired Charlotte. What a fascinating woman. It makes me want to
Yeah.
get that book. But in the 1970s, you also introduce us to another character named Annie. So can you also tell us about bringing the very real Deanna Vreeland as a character who interacts with Annie?
Right. Oh, that was fun to write. So Annie's 19. She loves fashion. This is really her first job as an assistant. The Met Gala is about to open in less than 2 weeks. Deanna Vreeland is a very tough boss. She knows what she wants. And so Annie's really thrown into the fire. And has to figure it out pretty fast. And Deanna Vreeland was incredible. When she was born, her mom always told her that she was ugly. And she went on to become this
Oh,
very famous iconic fashion leader.
yeah.
And she was so interesting. She'd rouge her cheeks and her earlobes. She would wear like black lacquered hair and very pale skin. She put Vaseline above her eyes. She would have very scarlet nails, and she dressed, divinely. And she was known
Oh
for
my
saying
gosh, I
her
have to go look
sayings.
her up. Yeah.
Oh, she was incredible. And she was a editor at Vogue magazine, and she got fired in her 60s and then was asked to be special consultant to the Met Gala. And the Met Gala before then had been this dowdy women's fundraiser. And she made it into the party of the year, which is what it's called today, where she would bring in Mick Jagger and Diana Ross and Jackie O, and people would dance around the Temple of Dender and in the Egyptian wing. And so she was really an incredible person who changed the Met Gala in many ways. And she's known for her famous sayings like, pink is the navy blue of India, or the best thing about London is Paris. And or like this is my favorite, unshined shoes are the end of civilization.
Oh my gosh.
And she was so larger than life. I had to include her. And a lot of what she
How
says in the book, I think
fun.
she absolutely said. And I just
Wow.
loved her as a figure. And I thought there may be later generations who don't know about this woman, and they should. So
I
That's
bet when we look up the images, we'll know the image, but not her name. And now we know it's Deanna Freeland's.
yeah,
That's
that's
amazing.
well,
and just to
speaking
show how the Met has changed over time,
yeah.
in 1949, when it started, a ticket was $50. And today a ticket to the Met Gala goes for 75,000.
Oh my
Oh my
gosh.
goodness.
And I don't see
Patti,
why my
so
publisher won't send me.
I
I
was
mean,
going
come
to say,
on.
you guys, should we go this year? I mean,
We
just,
should. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Treat yourself. Why not? Come on.
We can write it off. It's okay.
We can write it up. Exactly. Can you imagine? Oh my goodness.
Oh.
Well, Fiona, speaking of character and these powerful female characters, who we should know more about, the stolen queen of your title has quite the story too. So Hathor Kare, am I saying it right? Hathor Kare?
Yep.
So she's
Nailed
the
it.
Egyptian queen or Egyptian pharaoh whose mummified remains are at the center of your novel. And she's based on the real life female pharaoh, Hatshepsut. Did I say that right?
You
Hatshepsut.
nailed
Yes.
it.
All
Geez,
right.
Kristin, thank you for
Woo!
not
All
having
right.
me ask that.
So you say in your author's note that Hatshepsut was initially described in the Met catalog as vain, ambitious, and unscrupulous, a characterization that was based on assumptions about the erasure of her images by her successors. But in 1966, an academic article questioned those assumptions, and that's the basis for one of the big storylines in your book. Can you talk to us a little bit about what history says about your Hathor Kare? Did I say it like all like
Yes,
paranoid? I'm
you
saying it wrong.
totally
Hathor
got it.
Kare. It's such a great name because you made it up. That's amazing. Can you tell us what history says about your Hathor Kare as your story opens, and about what this perhaps means more broadly about assumptions we hold from the past?
Oh, that's such a great question. Yes. Hathor Kare is based on Hatshepsut. And as you said, that's everything that all happened. She had a very successful leadership for 20 years. She died, and then suddenly all of her statues were smashed, and no one really knew why. And she just disappeared from time. And then these scholars, found the statues in a quarry and put them together and realized, oh, this is an important woman. And then, as you mentioned, a scholar realized that the smashing had to happen later. And so why was it? And so that's what we explore in the book. And Charlotte becomes very obsessed with Hathor Kare. And I changed the name because I knew I had to change timelines and things. And
Yeah.
I didn't want the actual scholars and archaeologists to not get
Yes.
credit.
Yeah.
I needed
Absolutely.
Charlotte to do this. And so, yeah, she gets very obsessed with her. And a lot of this is based on what really happened. For example, the way that they find her mummy is very similar to what happened in real life. So it was fun to bring that to life. But really what she's doing is I think Charlotte feels very unheard.
Yep.
She's associate curator. She can't get to be curator because that guy is keeping her down, and although she's doing all the work.
Yep.
And so she becomes obsessed with this woman who I like to say was revered, erased, reviled, and then finally restored.
I love
And
that.
so to follow that journey, as Charlotte is also following that journey,
Yep.
right? She's been through great tragedy and has to figure out who she is and what she stands for at this time. And
Absolutely.
I have to say, one of the best things about the Egypt trip was going to this museum where the mummy of Hatshepsut is there. And it's this dark room, and you have to keep your voice down. And to walk around and to think, those are her fingernails, and that is her hair. And this is the actual woman who walked the earth 3,500 years ago, who
That's
ruled Egypt.
incredible.
Yeah,
I mean,
that it just,
what a powerful thing.
yeah,
Wow.
like there she is. This is all that she did. And now we get to celebrate her. And so it felt very important to bring her to life. And, we don't go
Yes.
back into ancient Egypt, but in Charlotte's point of view, she's a major character.
Well, I think what kind of strikes me about that also is that you normally write about New York, which compared to Egypt is very, very, very young. I mean, you're writing about a place where the history only goes back a few hundred years. And here you are journeying to a place where the history goes back thousands of years. And pieces of history from thousands of years ago are physically there. I mean, that must have just been such an incredible experience, particularly for you. That's just incredible.
Absolutely. I love the idea of finding these women who have been lost to history
Yeah.
and bringing them back to life. And so, in doing this, we're putting a spotlight on Christiane de Roche Noblecourt,
Yep.
all these women with hard names,
Yeah.
Hatshepsut. Like we're really, hopefully, um, offering a different way of looking at history so that it's more through a female lens.
I love that.
Would love to see something like that.
Yeah.
You
Very
know,
powerful.
I love going to Oxford, and they have the Ashmolean, which is one of the oldest museums in the world, and they have a whole Egypt section. And I love going in there and thinking about these people who walked the earth
Yeah.
3,000 years ago, and and what would they
Yeah.
think about us staring at their remains? It's
Yeah.
anyway, it's
Right.
really fascinating and incredible. All right. So, Fiona, as you know, Kristin and I both write about the past too. And like you, we sometimes take these little nuggets of truth and then spin fictionalized worlds around those real life happenings. Can you talk about what building this story was like? What was that? You have real buildings, real Egyptian leaders, a real Met Gala, a real theft, such as the 1978 one at the Met, where a 2,500-year-old marble head was stolen. What is your process for braiding together these real things we just mentioned and then bringing in your fictionalized story?
Yeah. So you guys probably know this. When you do research, you just cast a wide net. And
Yep.
you're trying not to get down too many rabbit holes that take you away from your story. But there's so much there. And the Met, I took a tour from the communications head at the time. I got a tour from a security guard who used to work there,
Oh, cool.
another tour from an Egyptologist. So I could get all these different viewpoints of the building and the things inside it.
Cool.
And so really what I'm doing is trying to figure out what will sustain the plot. I figure out the characters first. So Charlotte and Annie, who are they? What do they want? What can I put in their way?
Yeah.
Because I always joke around that the last thing you want to read is about a happy family that gets happier.
Yeah.
Like, no, right? You need things in their way. And
Yeah.
so in the book, Charlotte and Annie are very different, but they're forced together, and that way they learn from each other and can grow and figure out who they really are. And yeah, it's just casting a huge wide net, interviewing a lot of people, and then going for things that make the hair on the back of my neck stand up.
Yeah.
Like seeing there's this beautiful statue fragment of a queen's face that's just it's the chin and lips of a beautiful woman. And they're so stunning, you can't imagine what the rest of the statue could have looked like. And it's so beautiful. I knew I had to use that as the stolen artifact in my book, yet that one has never gone missing. And I wanted to make it clear. So in my book, it's called the Cerulean Queen. She's made out of a blue stone versus the one that is in existence is yellow jasper. And so I take it and I kind of play with it a little bit and make it my own, using the scaffolding of reality and history, but then using that to layer a fictional story upon. And then, as you know, you describe very clearly in the author's note what's real and what's not, because I know readers want to know.
They always want to know. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you can never skip the author's note in a historical fiction novel, right? I mean, I feel like that it's what brings it all into the real world, and yours are fabulous. All right. So switching gears a little bit, I would love to talk to you briefly about your advocacy work for Parkinson's research. So 3 years ago, you announced that you'd been diagnosed with Parkinson's through a really beautiful, heartfelt, very open essay on goodmorningamerica.com. And now I know that you sit on the patient council of the Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's Research. Can you talk a bit about how finding this mission for advocacy has changed your life?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. I really appreciate that. As you know, when you're hit with a medical shock, like it
Yeah.
is being diagnosed with breast cancer or Parkinson's, you really need to stop and evaluate where you stand and what you want. And at first there was this sheer panic of, oh no, what does this mean? In a year, will I be in a wheelchair? How will I manage? And I'm very lucky that my symptoms are minor. They're well controlled by medication. So I'm lucky in that way. But at the same time, it's a degenerative disease, and over time you get worse. And so being active with the Michael J. Fox Foundation has been such a gift, because when you're doing advocacy and you're trying to get the word out about new research and a possible cure, and they're making enormous strides. I think they've spent over $2 billion on research so far. It's a great organization. And there, as the patient's counsel, you walk into a room and there's 30 or 40 people, all with Parkinson's.
Wow.
And it's
Wow.
hilarious, first of all, because we joke around a lot. And it's very supportive, so anything I can do to support that organization and help, I think a lot of people don't talk about Parkinson's because they don't want to seem old, or they don't want to lose their job. And in that way, it feels like breast
Yes.
cancer from 30 or 40 years ago, right? Where no one said
Yep.
anything. And with Parkinson's, I think there's, with breast cancer, with anything like that, there's power in numbers. And the more people are vocal and stand up and say, yep, this is what it looks like, I'm doing okay, the
Yes.
better we'll be. And so going to book talks and hearing people share their stories about being caregivers or having Parkinson's, and sometimes they'll whisper it to me because they don't want anyone to know. Just for someone to be able to share that is very important to me.
It's beautiful.
I think Patti and I have both had that experience with people talking to us about breast cancer at book talks too. I mean,
Yes.
it's you find yourself in a community that you never expected, but that's a closer and more linked community than you would have imagined. So that's incredible. I'm so glad that you've used this thing that has happened to you to do so much good in the world. I mean, you've done something really beautiful, and you continue to do something beautiful with it. Do you think that the diagnosis and the strength that you've found in using it for good has influenced your work as a writer over the last few years? Has it changed you, like the way you look at the world as an artist, for example?
Yeah, definitely. Because you just don't know what's ahead.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I could worry about what's going to be in 7 or 10 years. And
Yeah.
then what if they find a cure and I have wasted all that
Yes.
energy? And so to me, it's very
Yeah.
important to live in the moment. And, if I'm walking down the street, I always remind myself, look, you're walking, you're doing okay.
Wow.
Sorry, I get
Beautiful.
weepy. Just to
That's
live in the
incredible,
moment and be
Fiona.
grateful for what you have. And in my books, it's been interesting because I'm open about it. I can explore it. So, for example, in the Spectacular, it was about a dancer. And what's the worst thing that could happen to a dancer?
She can't
Right.
dance.
And so to very lightly blend it into that book, and with only a light touch,
Yes.
helps. And yeah, so I think it just hopefully deepens the work a little bit, because when you are thinking about, what's ahead, and you don't know, and it could be
Yes.
scary, it's lovely to have a book to work on where you can escape into it, or play with it and weave it into it. I'm so glad at what we do.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
I always say I don't know why other people don't write. I think it's the only way I alchemize the world around me.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, that's such a good word. Yes, that's it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, one of the most rewarding things about running the Friends in Fiction Facebook group, which has more, as we mentioned, than 250, because 25 is our number for the day,
Yeah, exactly.
is that Chris and I, along with Kristy and Mary Kay, get a front row seat to what readers are reading and talking about. And we have been so moved, and watching on social media and
Yeah.
watching it, the number of readers who on their own plan Fiona Davis themed trips to New York City to follow in the footsteps of your characters. So
Yeah.
what does this mean to you to see readers so moved by your story that they traveled to New York to see the buildings and walk in the footsteps and talk about your characters and try to kind of relive it? What does that mean to you?
Oh, it's so moving, because I just love being able to share the history with other people and understand that they're getting the same out of it that I am, that
Yes.
need to find more, and who are the ghosts and who are the generations who live there. And I mean, just recently there were 3 of your followers on Friends in Fiction who were posting all about their trip, and so there are pictures of the Dakota and Grand Central, and someone tagged me, and so I was able to see, and I thought, oh my goodness, this is incredible. And every day they'd post, and then everybody would comment. And
Yeah.
I was so
So
moved that I
fun.
reached out to them, and we ended up meeting for tea.
Isn't
Because
that
I
so
just
Oh,
thought,
that
nice? I
is
love
so
that.
amazing.
Yeah.
Well, it was so much fun, and it was great to talk with them and where they came from and what they're reading. It was just it's your group is really special. You've got an
Oh,
amazing crew here.
well, thank you for saying that. We are
Well,
we
they
are
love
really
you. So
yes, yes. And that was I couldn't believe it when you did that. I thought that was such an incredibly kind thing to do, Fiona. That was
yeah.
and I'm sure that really deepened their experience so much. That's wonderful. It was amazing to watch their posts though, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I know. They did a deep dive. They were comprehensive. They covered
They really
everything.
did. They really did. I
I
love
loved
it.
watching it. It was really
Yeah, it
cool.
was so cool. Okay, so what is up next for you, Fiona? Can you tell us which New York landmark will take center stage in your next book?
Yeah, so it's a very little one known one, even among New Yorkers. I'll say the name. It's called the Morris Jumel Mansion. No one knows it. It's on the 160th Street, so a little further uptown. Beautiful mansion, the oldest house in New York City. It's really really stunning. It has a great history. George Washington headquartered there during the Revolutionary War.
It's
The
crazy.
woman who lived there in the 1800s was the daughter of a prostitute who ended up being the richest woman in New York due to her real estate acumen. She was
That's
brilliant as a
awesome.
business person. And she married Aaron Burr as her second husband, as we know
Oh
from
my
Hamilton,
goodness.
to the point where Lin-Manuel Miranda wrote part of Hamilton in Burr's bedroom in this house.
That
Oh
is
my
incredible.
gosh.
Yeah,
I
so there's a
love
lot to
these
play
things
with.
you find.
Yes.
Houses are living things. It's so
Yeah.
cool. I love it.
And apparently she haunts it. So I'm hoping to meet her in person, which would be kind of cool.
That was
Ooh. Oh, I
hi,
love
ghost.
that.
Right?
All right, Fiona, we cannot wait for that book. And we cannot wait for our readers out there to get to read The Stolen Queen, which is coming very, very soon. So, Fiona, if you would stick around, we have more to talk to you about. But first, we have a few quick reminders for our listeners and viewers out there.
All right, everyone, for all of you who are watching or listening, again, Happy New Year. We encourage you to rush out right now at this minute and buy your copies of The Stolen Queen. And why wouldn't you after hearing us talk about it?
Yes.
The perfect place to do that is the Friends and Fiction shop on bookshop.org. You'll get a discount on the book. You'll help fund our show. And who doesn't want to do that? All while supporting our guests like Fiona and our beloved independent booksellers, which is one of the reasons we started this show in the
Yeah.
first place.
Absolutely. Don't forget to visit friendsandfiction.com for details on our show schedule, upcoming in-person events, the award-winning Friends and Fiction official book club with Brenda and Lisa, our merch store, and our Substack newsletter sign up.
So I love talking about our Substack because I'm a big Substack reader. I feel like it's one of the social media sites or apps that I scroll through, and I'm always finding something fascinating. There's loads of writers on there. There's classes, there's articles, a lot of long form essays. I really love the app, and we are there. Friends in Fiction is there. And you can read all of our free weekly posts on the Substack website or app, or you just subscribe and it shows up as a newsletter directly in your inbox. If you upgrade to our paid Substacks, which is just $5 a month, which is, come on, that's like one cup of coffee a month, or for me, half a cup of coffee. So you'll have access to deeper dives with all our weekly show guests, including writing tips, plus roundtable discussions with the four of us. We've had some really fascinating ones with author friends. We just did an amazing one on writing tips. We gave writing tips and we picked our favorites from the show. So, plus you get VIP private Zooms with the four of us. All right, that's even more stuff, but I'm boring you. So, if you enjoy tuning in for our Friends in Fiction interviews, this is a big way in which you can support us for basically, like I said, a cup of coffee each month. Check us out on friendsandfiction.substack.com.
And one last announcement before we get back to Fiona. Don't forget about the Friends and Fiction 2025 book subscription box available only through our friends at Oxford Exchange, which is a wonderful independent bookstore in Tampa. For one all-in price, you'll get 3 separate shipments in 2025, in March with Patti's new book, in May with Kristy's, and in June with mine. All of them signed, all of them hardcover first editions. Plus, you will get exclusive gifts, a Friends and Fiction friendship bracelet and a card magnet that are available only in this bundle. So visit Oxford Exchange now to get yours, and you can also link to that through our website, friendsandfiction.com.
All right, back to you, Fiona. You have a lot of events. You're on the road. I want you to stay healthy out there. Do you hear me? And you have one with me next week. We are together in Fairhope, Alabama at Page and Palette, and I cannot wait. They called to ask, and I was like, let me think about it. Yes. So
Thank
I
you
also
so
think
much for that.
I also
Oh,
think New York thinks that like Birmingham, Alabama and Fairhope, Alabama, because they're in Alabama, are like 20 minutes away. And I'm like, have you looked at a map? Like, but Fairhope is on the coast and it is so have you
It
been
is.
yet, Fiona?
no, this is the first time.
Oh,
It's
it's
one of my favorite
lovely.
bookstores and towns in the Southeast. Okay. So besides with me in Fairhope, can you tell everyone else where to not only find you online, but where they might find you on tour in the coming weeks?
Sure, yeah. It's pretty intense. You can find me at FionaDavisBooks.com. And on Instagram, I'm Fiona Davis Author, same with Facebook. And from there, you can link to all the events that I'll be doing. I'll be traveling all over in January and then more in February and March and even April. So it's really starting to pile up, which will be great. And I cannot wait. I love meeting readers, so I think it'll
So
be
do I.
fun.
All right, awesome. That's going to be great. And we can find you at Fiona Davis Author, or Fiona Davis Books.
FionaDavisBooks.com.
Books.com. Okay, perfect. Okay, and finally, since this is our first show of the new year, and since you ladies are two dear friends of mine, I would love to pause for a moment and ask you about New Year's resolutions. So, have you guys made a resolution for 2025? What are you hoping that this year brings you personally and professionally? Fiona, how about you? Do you have a New Year's resolution?
Yeah, I would like to meditate more. I know
Good
I
one.
should
Okay.
do it more. And I know I want to do 20 minutes a day if I can. And because it's so good for your brain,
So
Yeah.
it's so good for the neuroplasticity, for the dopamine, for everything that's
Ooh,
going on in there. It's a way of cleaning out the system, if you will. And so I've been too busy and I write it down on my to-do list and don't get to it. So I'm going to get to it.
good. That's a great resolution. How about you, Patty?
I always have that one. Fiona, do you use an app? I use an app. Do you use an app?
I used Headspace for a long time. Yeah, I thought it was great. What do you
I use
use?
Waking Up and Headspace, but sometimes I'll be in one of those moods, and I'll be like, oh, I forgot about that whole meditating thing. It like cleans out the hard drive to make you sit still for a minute. I'm with you on that one.
Yeah.
So I haven't given a lot of thought to my resolutions, which I always do at the beginning of the year right now. But like you, Fiona, I am on the road. My tour starts
Oh,
March 18th and it's intense. And I really want to find ways and meditating is one of them, but my goal and resolutions are really about finding ways to stay centered and healthy while living like that. Because
Yeah.
being out there like this is our dream. Like I want to be grateful, right? This is what we want. And so I want to stay centered and healthy and not get like, "Oh my god, I'm dying out here," like just so
yeah.
I'm looking at all the ways including packing tips to do that. Because it's
Patty,
hard to pack for a month. Like it's
Fiona and
hard.
I were just talking about that earlier today. Like, how do you
Yes,
pack in the
yeah.
winter for a tour?
Oh
And
my
we got
gosh,
some
it's
great
so
tips, which we'll
hard.
share for you. We
Okay,
got some
please
great
do. I
tips.
remember
Exactly.
talking to Kate Quinn about it once, and she was like,
Yes.
"I bring one pair of black pants and one black shirt." And I'm like, "Well, I'm not talking to you because I'm not doing that." So moving on to the next tip.
No, her thing is like change up the jewelry. So
Yeah,
scarf, yeah, like bring a scarf, bring a jewelry, and then that'll change the
Yep.
outfit, which I think is really a good idea.
it's a good
Yeah.
idea, but I'm never going to do it. So anyway, to stay centered and organized and calm, and not
I love it.
allow the circumstances to dictate who I am, but like let me dictate this. So that's a good way of putting it. How about you, Kristen?
It's brilliant.
It is, yeah. I think mine is very similar to both of yours. I think we're all saying the same basic thing in just different ways. Mine is to be more present. I always make the mistake the workaholic side of my brain goes into overdrive, and I can't fully engage in something else when I'm thinking about my mile-long to-do list. I
Yes.
need to get better about putting aside that mile-long to-do list and realizing that it will still be there tomorrow, and I can tackle it first thing tomorrow morning. But right now, I have an 8-year-old who's not going to stay 8 forever, who I need to be with and do things with and enjoy and and we do things. I mean, we go on these little mini vacations where we go over to Disney for a night, or he has basketball and we all go to his basketball games or things like that. But like I mean, I need to be more present in the things that are not on my calendar. Like just a Thursday afternoon at 3 p.m. Like I need to be with my son, I need to be with my husband, and I need to do better with that. So that I think that's my resolution this year.
It's like Fiona, you
Love
saying,
that.
I am right now walking down the street.
Yes,
Because of meditation, I do
exactly.
that sometimes. I'll be like, right now, the leaves are falling and they're golden brown. And like I talk to myself about it. Like you are here right now in your front yard getting the
Yes.
mail and the leaves are falling and it's 5 p.m. and it's gorgeous. And then
Yeah.
that's enough.
Yeah.
Like just that moment, right? So
Mhm.
You know, I
Beautiful.
thought that having gone through the cancer stuff a couple years ago would have made me more aware of that, of being able to stop and say, like, I'm so grateful I'm still here, and it did for a while. And then you just kind of slip back into your old patterns. So yeah, I think it's important to
Yeah.
be really conscious about that. Yeah, it's totally right. Okay. So we all need to be more conscious and just let things go and enjoy the moment, right?
we could live forever and we are
Yeah,
never going to cross everything off our to-do list.
it's
So
so
once
true.
you accept that truth, it's like, what? Okay.
Exactly.
We
All
are
right.
never gonna write everything we wanna write,
That's
and we are
true.
never
I
gonna
know.
finish
I
everything
know.
we wanna finish.
Life is too
Right.
short.
Yep.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Well, Fiona, thank you so much for being here today to talk to us about the Stolen Queen, your travels to Egypt, these incredible moments that you're plucking from history and bringing to us for our reading pleasure, and also for this impromptu little therapy session. I feel like
Yeah,
a little bit
there you
better.
go.
This is a really good way to
Yeah.
start the year off.
I was actually had a bunch more to say, and I was like, "Stop it. We're talking about the Stolen Queen."
I know it spins into like a therapy
I'm like,
show. I love it.
I have some thoughts on that. All right. Be sure to tune in next week, therapy free, when Kristy and I will be welcoming Kate Fagan to discuss her new novel, The 3 Lives of Kate K. That show will air on the Friends in Fiction Facebook page and YouTube and Instagram on Wednesday, January 8th at 7 p.m., which makes me want to remind you guys, we have been posting the shows also on Instagram if you want to watch them there. And it will be published on our podcast for your listening pleasure on Friday, January 10th, when I will be in Fairhope, Alabama with a woman named Fiona Davis.
Oh, I wish I could be
Yeah.
there.
I know.
I'm already feeling sad and left out. Fiona, I do see, I think you're coming to Tampa, right? With
Do
Sarah
join.
Penner.
Yes.
Maybe
Yes.
I'll see if I can scoot down there. That's about a 90-minute
Oh,
drive
I
for
was
me.
I
We'll
was hoping
see.
to get closer to you and rope you in as
I
well, but we
know.
couldn't
And
quite manage it. But
anytime.
one of these days.
One of these days, absolutely. All right, Fiona, thanks again for being with us. And thanks to all of you out there for being with us too. We will see you next time. Happy New Year, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. You can join us every week on Facebook or YouTube, where our live show airs on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Also, subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Instagram. We're so glad you're here.